family. Two different ideas for a touring motorcycle from BMW and Honda. And how do drivers who are taller or shorter than average cope behind the wheel?
Hello and welcome to this week's Top Gear, and we start tonight with one of Britain's longest running and most widely spread success stories. Let me give you a couple of clues. It's a vehicle that's been around for 40 years. It's sold all over the world, I'm told, apart from Albania and North Vietnam. The answer, as I'm sure you've guessed, is the ubiquitous Land Rover. This is the very first production vehicle built here in Solihull. It was designed loosely on the next American Army Jeep. The prototypes were built out of War Department surplus materials, and it was eventually launched on the world 40 years ago this very month at the Amsterdam Motor Show. Since then, they've built 1.6 million of these vehicles, and one of their proudest boasts is that over 1 million of them are still in regular daily use with armies and farmers and foresters and engineers all over the world. A vehicle with a remarkable history, and Becky Adam has been looking into it.
The birth of the Land Rover was really pure chance. The head of engineering at Rover, Maurice Wilkes, needed a vehicle to replace the ageing Jeep he used on his farm. Conveniently, after World War II, Rover had a redundant armaments factory in Solihull. They needed a use for it, and Wilkes needed his transport. Even more conveniently, his brother was the managing director. They used aluminium because steel was in short supply. The lightweight Land Rover had arrived. Inside the car, and it's back to basics, just painted metal and the odd instrument or two, for example the petrol gauge and speedometer. There were no indicators, just hand signals, and only one windscreen wiper, on the driver's side of course. The only additional feature was the gear lever used to engage four-wheel drive. Luggage space wasn't exactly brilliant either. With the wheelbase the same as the Jeep's, there was only just enough room for one bale of hay, or sheep. Unbelievably, Land Rover originally intended for the car to be even more basic, with no doors, no passenger seats, and certainly no spare tyre. The company were determined to make their new vehicle do anything. Conversions such as this huge-wheeled Forest Rover were often no use on the road. To travel in pastures new, they appeared with track tyres and incredibly complex agricultural adaptations, such as the super lawnmower. There were even modifications for rail travel. Sales exceeded their wildest expectations. By 1959, they were selling over 30,000 a year. Some important improvements were made. A stylist was employed for the first time to improve on the shape for the Series 2 of 1958. 2-inch wider side panels and a curved bonnet were the only improvements thought necessary on the functional shape. But were such modifications enough? In the 60s, Land Rover had to face up to Japanese competition for the first time. Toyota launched its ugly Land Cruiser in Africa, and in doing so exposed some of Land Rover's weaknesses, which were noted at the time.
Kenya is to allow the Japanese to bring in a bigger quota of cars and Land Cruisers next year. Rover are fighting back with a bigger engine and stronger gearboxes and transmissions. On price, there's nothing much in it. Most people in East Africa are loyal to the Land Rover, but they would like a softer suspension for a long day's drive, curing a local complaint called Land Rover back.
Land Rover's response in 1970 was the Range Rover, which had the softer suspension, but a much heftier price tag. It was an instant success as a cult vehicle, but only in wealthier countries, where the marketing was aimed at the successful urban executive out for some light relief in the countryside.
Now you know what people see in a Range Rover.
Both vehicles have been used as a base for some outrageous machines. This amphibious-looking creature I'm driving is the Profile. Converted by Glenfrome Engineering of Bristol, it's based on the Land Rover 110 with the V8 engine. The interior, with its lashings of walnut, is much more luxurious than your average off-road vehicle. The Profile costs around £45,000, which may go some way to explain why most of them end up on the sand dunes of the Middle East.
Rollin', 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 though the streams are swollen, keep them doggies rollin' raw hard. Rain and wind and weather, hell bent for leather, wishing all the things I'm missing. Good bills, love and kissing are waiting at the end of my ride. Move 'em on, hit 'em up, hit 'em up, move 'em on, hit 'em up, rawhide, cut 'em out, ride 'em in, cut 'em out, cut 'em out, ride 'em in, rawhide.
The best-selling Land Rover in Britain today is the 90 Turbo Diesel. The turbo gives quite a good performance, and the Range Rover coil spring suspension improves the off-road ride.
It's permanently four-wheel drive, of course. You've got 5 forward gears. Then you've got what's called a differential lock down here. You push it harder to the left and forward. That engages the 5 low-range gears that you need for serious off-road work. You engage that differential lock, and there really is quite difficult to find anywhere where this vehicle won't go.
So for £14,000, you now get power steering, classier instruments, a clock and a radio cassette, and more luxurious trim, even carpets on the floor. It's part of a strategy to move the Land Rover and the Range Rover upmarket to appeal to more sophisticated customers. And it's a policy that seems to have benefited the Range Rover rather more than the Land Rover. With new markets, like the States now on stream, for the first time last year, more Range Rovers were sold than Land Rovers. In fact, they're making fewer Land Rovers than in the 50s. Sales in Africa and the Middle East have declined seriously. So why has this happened?
Because our traditional markets, which were the backbone of the company, have just run out of cash. Oil revenues and debt crisis, and that's the basic fault. That's the reason why we had to change, because our customers want the product in those countries, but they just haven't got the money to pay for it.
So is there a future for the Land Rover 40 years on?
Of course there is. I mean, we are still doing remarkably well with the Land Rover, and there's lots of growth still to be got. Our growth in Europe in the last 5 years has been 44%, showing indicatively that that market, which is growing faster than any others, there's a lot of scope for us yet there.
And what do Land Rover customers feel about the latest improvements? We asked a man who's owned 10 since 1965.
I'm a farmer, so this Land Rover gets used for going around the stock every day. We pull farm trailers with it, we pull stock trailers and general farm use, as well as being my own private car. I've tried all sorts of the competition, which is basically Japanese. With most of the Japanese vehicles, they're very narrow and they are very much easier to tip over on hills than the new version of the Land Rover. If they paid more attention to the actual finish of the vehicle and the standard of equipment, the heating and all the rest of it, I think they would have an unbeatable vehicle. There is still nothing, without doubt, there's nothing that will touch a Land Rover with its cross-country performance.
Now, this car is, if anything, even more popular than the old Land Rover, the MGB. They built it for 20 years, and when they stopped, there was a public outcry. And several companies are still cashing in on that popularity by offering rebuilt MGBs. If you want to do part of the work yourself, you can, as we saw at the Classic Motor Show, buy a new body shell made on the old jigs for about £3,000 and rebuild it using a donor car for most of the spare parts. Now, this was the actual MGB we saw being rebuilt at the Classic Motor Show during those 3 days, and we thought we'd give it a road test. Well, I used to drive one of these, a red one even, so this is a real trip down memory lane. This is a professional rebuild job, of course, done to a very high standard, so this car is almost like new, but it does show what can be done with the right amount of patience and effort. Compared with a modern car, well, the interior has a pleasing austerity with a very plain dash, but the steering is heavy, the acceleration is pretty poor, and the ride's a bit lumpy. But you can see why this car has retained its popularity, because it gives you all the fun, really, of seat-of-the-pants driving. But now let's move on to more modern forms of transport. The new competitor for the Sierras and the Cavaliers, the new Volkswagen Passat launched in this country today. Chris Goffey tested it together with a family from Yorkshire who volunteered to take part in one of our road tests.
In 1973, Volkswagen launched the Passat, and it's never really set the world on fire since then from a sales point of view. It had a facelift in 1980, but despite that, it's always been the poor relation of the family. Well, now there's a new Passat out, a new aggressive Passat, much more room inside, One engine size, 1.8 litres, and 3 levels of power output. They've got rid of the hatchback version, that you can only have it in estate and saloon, and this is the GL, the middle of the range. We've lent it to the Hess family of Dishforth in Yorkshire, and over the last week they've been driving it around literally all over the country to see what they make of it. Ian Hesp is a sales manager with a company in nearby Ripon which distributes car components to the motor trade. It's a job which involves a good deal of travelling around the country. His wife Marlene is a part-time secretary and housewife. And they've 2 daughters, Joanne, aged 13, and 9-year-old Amy. They run a Ford Sierra, so what do they look for from a family car?
Well, in my job, I do about 50,000 miles a year, so comfort's got to be fairly high on the list. Space inside the car and in the boots is important too, because I do from time to time carry bulky loads. Obviously, the car needs to be reasonable on performance and have good economy, and obviously reasonable to maintain too.
I would prefer something easy to handle. The children like plenty of leg room in the back and a firm ride. Anything too soft and they complain of car thickness.
So the faithful Sierra was tucked away in the garage in mothballs, and they all piled into the latest addition to the family.
The new Passat's got a nice smooth shape, low wind noise, good solid lines, good look to it. It performs well, eager responsive engine, it's equipped with a beautiful gearbox, and I like 5th gear, you don't have to keep on changing down. Road holding's good, corners well, nice tight suspension that seems to follow the road surface. On this car, power steering, so it's light and precise. Brakes, a bit disappointed in the brakes, there's a lot of pedal travel and they're very spongy. The instruments are well laid out, they're clear. I find that the stalks and the switches logically sighted. Surprised there was no face level cold air vents on this car that were independent of the heater. It's nice to have a blast of cold air on a long run every now and then.
The car was easy to manoeuvre, particularly when parking. It had good all-round visibility, and I particularly like the fact that I can see well over the bonnet. As a passenger though, on long journeys, the seating felt rather hard. It's got some good pockets, some neat ideas, but the pocket on the side here I thought could have been a little bit bigger.
They put the car through their usual routine of work, shopping and picking up the children, and they even fitted in a trip to North Wales. The family take camping holidays, so what better way to put the car through its paces?
Here, at the front, we've got a nice smooth panel which is made of high-impact plastic. Should resist stone chips as well. Under the bonnet, the engine goes across the car, and that gives a lot of space inside, and you can see it's not cramped in here either. There's your dipstick, nice and handy, you can get at it easy. There's a computer on board, and that records any faults that might occur inside the vehicle's wiring systems. Later on, these can be decoded by the main dealer.
As standard on the Passat, there's a central locking system which prevents the interior locks from being opened. So if anyone breaks the window, they still can't get in. If the car's fitted with electric windows, as this one is, the central locking system automatically closes those too. But of course, don't lock the children in.
There's plenty of legroom in here, and I think the reclining seats are a good idea.
I like these lights because I can read without distracting the driver.
The headrests are quite good for sleeping, and they do block the sound out a bit.
It's a lot more area and spacey.
The Passat boot is certainly large, as you can see by all the camping equipment that we managed to fit inside it. We've had in there tables, chairs, tents, bedding, crockery, and on many occasions we even get the television set in there too.
So, what's their verdict?
It's a very nice motor car. There's no two ways about it. It's well engineered, it's well balanced. Yes, very good indeed.
Your recommendation to add it to the company fleet?
Well, yes, but I'd have some reservations about that, really, Chris, because as far as I'm concerned, personally, I wouldn't spend the £11,500 that it would need. For me, anyway. There are other models that offer perhaps a similar specification, but not quite so much money.
It felt very spacious inside. The children found there was plenty of leg room. The seating felt fairly hard to me, but the children liked the firm ride.
So, in comparison to the Sierra, where would your vote go?
I think it would be with the Passat.
The Volkswagen Passat GL has an 1800cc 90 brake horsepower engine, and it'll accelerate to 60 miles an hour in 12.9 seconds. Top speed 110 miles an hour, fuel consumption around 36 to the gallon, and the price £11,500. It's always interesting to see what test families think. Ian mentioned the brakes, and he's quite right. There's an awful lot of pedal travel, and sometimes you don't think the car's going to stop. Aside from the specifics, though, you've got to say the Passat is a very nice, rounded design. It does everything very competently without being outstanding in any one area. I think that the real winner of the range is going to be the 16-valve engine in both saloon and estate versions, and that's a real niche of the market that hasn't been exploited up to now.
One of the key elements in Land Rover's development has always been its versatility, not just to go anywhere, but a genuine do virtually anything type vehicle. And that versatility is constantly being extended. If you've got a special project in mind, you come along here to the Special Operations Department, get around a drawing board and come up with something slightly different. Like, for example, this 6-wheel drive fire engine built for the Dorset Fire Brigade, carries 4 firemen and 150 gallons of water to difficult to reach fires. Here we've got a Land Rover ambulance, 4-wheel drive this time, with a complete ambulance pack on the back. And there are countless other examples. But of course, few vehicles are purpose-built. Most of us have to accept cars designed around Mr. Standard Man, or perhaps I should say standard person. And for some people, particularly tall or particularly short, that can present real problems. Sue Baker has been looking into those problems, starting at the very top of the market.
When it comes to choosing a car, very often the deciding factor is the seating position. How well does it fit you? Well, I'm 5 feet 3 inches tall, and if only I could afford a car like this, I wouldn't have any problems whatsoever. But all too often it is a difficult thing for very tall or very short people to fit into cars. So just how much thought goes into the problem?
Right, you can slide back as far as you can.
Here at Loughborough University, the ergonomics group works closely with car manufacturers to produce a vehicle designed to accommodate most motorists. Ergonomics being simply the science of fitting machines to humans.
The most important equipment we can use actually are people. It's very important that vehicles are designed with the end user, i.e. the person who's going to buy it, clearly in mind at the beginning. And as such, at Loughborough we have an extensive database of local people who are willing to come along and act as test subjects. We need to select a variety of people, those with very long legs and those with shorter legs. You'll be experiencing different problems. Long legs, you have a problem really with where can I put my legs? There isn't enough space in the car. And if you're short-legged, then you often have problems reaching the foot pedals. You can then move on to a more modern-day technique such as SAMI, a system for aiding man-machine interaction evaluation. It's a computer graphics tool which allows you to model man and equipment in 3 dimensions. And so you can show a man looking forwards or looking rearwards whilst reversing.
A precise range of measurements from various parts of the body are carefully calculated and then translated into a table called the percentile scale. This is drawn up from accumulated measurements taken from the shortest to the tallest members of the population. But car designs are based around the 50th percentile, in other words, halfway up the scale. This corresponds to a man of 5 feet 8.5 inches and a woman of 5 feet 3.5. But what happens if you're not of average height and build? We invited 4 people who fall outside the average to take part in our own tests. Hugh is 6 feet 4 inches tall. David is 6 feet. Rosalind is 5 foot 9.5. And Margaret is 5 foot 2 inches. We asked them to try out a variety of cars to see if their specific needs are being met. Now this looks your type of nice sporty car, but how do you fit?
Very comfortably to sit in, but I find that my head is on the roof, and to look out the front, I'm looking out of the front, the top of the windscreen. I feel as though I ought to be sitting down here, although it's nice to have the steering column that can move up and down.
You look a little bit like a sardine in there.
Well, for a compact car, it's not that bad. I'm still very restricted on headroom. I'd find it impossible to drive because I can't bring my knee up far enough to get my foot on the clutch.
Oh, yes.
So, for me, I couldn't drive this one. I don't think I could drive it safely at all.
So how does a 6-footer fit behind a 6'2" driver? Not very well.
Doesn't at all. There's no room at all. I wouldn't like to sit in it for more than a few moments. Certainly couldn't go on the road in it.
You need direction, yeah, you need a name. When you're standing at the crossroads, every highway looks the same. After a while, you get to recognize the signs. So if you get it wrong, you get it right next time, next time.
Can you move all the adjustments until you can get a better driving position? Or is it not really ideal for you?
That's quite good.
That didn't look too uncomfortable getting in, yet it's quite a small car.
Yes, very surprising. It's a lovely car to drive, the Metro. I don't think I'd like to go hundreds of miles with a family in the back of it, but for me driving on my own, it's a very comfortable position to drive. The most comfortable car you've given me today.
Well, it's obvious that car ergonomics have come a very long way since the good old Mini first came out, but it's still clearly a very difficult problem area. And it's up to us to make our views well known if we're to avoid cars becoming just another compromise.
Well, if you have trouble squeezing into your car, we'd like to hear from you. I'll give you the address to write to in a minute or two. Now to servicing, because earlier in the series we asked you to write to us if you had comments to make about the way your car is serviced. We've had lots of replies. A common cause of complaint was the fact that most manufacturers set standard times for servicing. Very few of them seem to set standard charges. And these can vary widely from dealer to dealer, even in the same area. The advice must be, therefore, I think, let the price mechanism work, i.e. shop around. Another complaint was the price of oil, because garages seem to charge whatever they choose. When the Selwyns of Staffordshire, for example, had their escort service recently, they were charged £2.50 a litre for the oil that was used, a total of about £10 for oil that would have cost less than £5 on the forecourt of the same garage. And there were many similar complaints. Another common cause of complaint were the tactics used by some manufacturers to limit a car owner's freedom. The Nissan 3-year 100,000-mile warranty, for example, and the Volvo lifetime care guarantee are only valid if you always go to those dealerships. Mr. Pearman of Buckinghamshire, for example, who owns this Volvo diesel, is extremely irked by the fact that every time the oil has to be changed, that's every 3,000 miles at £20 a time, he has to go to a Volvo dealer. He'd prefer to do it himself or go to a more convenient local garage where the prices are cheaper. So it does seem if you want the benefits of a guarantee, you have to trade off that personal freedom. Now, if you do have problems fitting into your car, or if you have comments to make about the way your car is serviced, please write to us at the following address. It's Top Gear, BBC Pebble Mill, Birmingham B5 7QQ, but we can't promise to reply to all your letters individually. Right, now to an item on motorcycles, and until recently the bike manufacturers have largely ignored the specific needs of the touring motorcyclist. That's why you see so many motorcycles on motorways laden down with parcels strapped on with bungee rubber. But now all that is changing, and this new bike from Suzuki, and this one here from Kawasaki, really represents something of a new breed, with good weather protection, some sort of luggage provision in these panniers, without losing their good handling characteristics. Now the British company of Norton is entering this market with a bike based very largely on the one they supply to the police and the RAC. Unique, of course, in the sense they use their own rotary engine, so it gives very smooth power delivery, to be launched in July. The snag is that the price tag for the Norton is £7,500 compared with around £5,000 for the two Japanese bikes. Now all these three bikes, of course, really represent the European view of things. The Americans have a quite different approach. They're like everything except the kitchen sink strapped to their bikes. And we've been comparing the very latest from America, made in fact by Honda USA, with the latest from BMW.
is what these two bikes are about. The open road, the wind in your face, and freedom from the humbug of traffic. BMW's offering on the left is the £6,500 K100 LT, flagship of the range. It shares the frame, 4-cylinder water-cooled engine and shaft drive of the other K100s. The American-built Honda Gold Wing costs £9,000 and weighs 900 pounds. It's really a luxury car on two wheels with sumptuous seating and incredible luggage capacity. The bike has a 1.5-litre flat-six engine of turbine smoothness and, like the BMW, shaft drive. But what really sets this big Honda apart is the incredible range of gadgetry. It's got a full audio system with all the controls mounted here, speakers into the fairing, even got a tape player in it, would you believe? And on the left handlebar, you've got a mute control, or you can change the station as you're driving. On the other handlebar, you've got the cruise control. Just like a car, you can set a speed and just cruise along on the motorway without having to worry about throttling. And all the other appurtenances that you really need. Good big instruments, nice big mirrors, easily adjustable. Really is the ideal setup for the rider who just wants to roll along nicely and have everything at his fingertips. By contrast, the European approach is this sort of bike. This is the BMW K100 LT, and it's the touring version of the standard LT bike. As you can see, pretty well the standard bike, but with the addition of panniers and top box like the Honda, also a dual seat, nothing like as extravagant as the Hondas, and a good fairing all round to protect you. A couple of extra instruments, and that's about it really, although there is provision for a radio if you want one as well. Out on the road, the BMW is much more agile and infinitely more manageable in heavy traffic. But it does have some serious failings. Under heavy braking, the bike nosedives on its suspension and can become unstable. The 1-litre engine produces considerable vibration, and the fairing generates bad turbulence at face level. I find these drawbacks unacceptable on a machine at this price. The Honda, by contrast, handles remarkably well considering its great weight. Though it can't exactly be hustled along country lanes, its suspension and brakes give no cause for concern, and it's amazing how little it loses out to the BMW. There's one thing about the Honda which is absolutely unique. It's the only motorcycle in the world that has a reverse gear.